Welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be discussing The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas. This is a beautiful old edition, which I'm pretty sure was in my father's library. I'm not 1000% certain, but pretty sure it was. And he's passed away now, so I have some sentimental attachment to things that he's owned. But I would say I also have some attachment to this as a story. I probably read The Count of Monte Cristo for the first time when I was a teenager. I feel I was 18, no, not even 18, maybe 16, 17, 18. But I didn't know at the time that I read an abridged version. I recall it being something like 300 pages. And even then, I really loved it. I remember saying to someone who asked me in that time period of my life, so I was 17, 18, what's your favorite novel? And without hesitation, I said The Count of Monte Cristo. And keep in mind, that's when I'd read maybe 20 novels, let's say in their full form. You read a lot when you're younger. You read junior editions of the Odyssey or whatever else. I wouldn't count that, but reading full novels on my own at that point in my life, I had maybe read 2 dozen, 3 dozen. And it was the top of my list. Now, it's not my favorite novel of all time. However, even now, more than 2 decades later, I would say it easily is in my top 20 of novels of all time. And that's for many reasons, a few of which I'll try to get to in this review. I will say, do the unabridged version. So while I don't recall exactly how the version I read that was abridged, how it was abridged, I mean, I know they've had to cut out massive parts of the story, but it's an injustice to read the abridged version of The Count of Monte Cristo. So don't do it. Now, that said, how are you going to read a 1,500-page book? This is a solution that I recommend, and I have recommended, I think, in this channel and on other occasions in person. Find a book club or find a buddy to read with. That you'll find when you have accountability for a large book, you're going to get through. You don't really need accountability to get through a 100-page book or a 200-page book. But when you get to 500, 600, 800, 1,000, and you're doing it on your own time, outside of school, without an assignment, you'll find life gets in the way. There are so many other things about life that need our attention, whether it's paying bills or administrivia. But I would encourage you, if you don't feel like you've got the willpower to get through a 1,500-page book, or you just don't have the accountability, scheduling, skill, whatever it might be, find a buddy or find a book club and get this done. I would tell you, I recently finished this with a book club here in Paris that I broke it into 3 sections. So this unabridged version weighs in at about, I want to say something like 1,500 pages, but I just broke it into 3 500 pages. Like, everyone brought different editions. This was a beautifully illustrated version. People had a penguin, whatever else it might be. But I just broke it up. I said, whatever edition you have, divide it into 3, and that's how we'll be reading and discussing it. And even then, you have to think, each time we're reading 500 pages, and we were meeting at 2-week intervals. So it was not, I would say, a leisurely read, but it meant that we were clear on all of the ideas. We were clear on everything that was happening. And some people were so caught up in the story, they finished it all in the first 2 weeks. So I think it very much is a page turner. It was written as a serial. And I think that it's something that you're going to enjoy. I alluded to the fact that I have many reasons I like it. I told you that there would be a few reasons. I've been talking about the abridged and unabridged, so let me get to the reasons. So the first, well, let's say, quarter of the book is dedicated to an unjust accusation and imprisonment of Edmond Dantes, our main character. And he, through a series of really interesting events, he manages to escape. Now, he comes back to find out that the people who imprisoned him have gone on to live very worldly, very successful lives in the eyes of the world, and his beloved fiancée has married one of these rivals. And he has managed, because of an acquaintanceship in the prison, to come across an enormous treasure. And he then plots his revenge. And the rest of the book is him taking his revenge. That's it. False imprisonment, takes his revenge. And you think, okay, well, how complicated can this revenge be? Oh, it can be pretty complicated. And so what does that mean? Who is revenge? There's a very famous line from scripture, vengeance is mine, saith the Lord, I will repay. So he is acting as his own vigilante agent. And I couldn't help but think, first of all, the Batman trope, the Iron Man trope comes from something like the Count of Monte Cristo, where you have someone with unlimited wealth, a unique special set of skills, and bad guys that need to be punished. So the Count of Monte Cristo predates those ideas. So the reason the new Matt Reeves Batman was on my mind, the Batman, is that film is bookended by I am vengeance as an answer to a question. Who are you? What are you? In the first instance of the film, Batman answers, I am vengeance. And he is going to wreak that vengeance without reference to any man or God. By the end of the film, one of the villains Batman is pursuing says he is vengeance. And Batman realizes that there is a problem. I'm not saying he gives up, and obviously it's a trilogy, so we'll see what Matt Reeves has to say about this in the next 2 movies. But he realizes that is an incorrect answer, or at least it's not a sufficient answer to say that I am vengeance to the answer of what to do with bad guys. And for us as a society as well, while we may cheer the vigilante, we may cheer the fact that bad guys get their comeuppance, you cannot help but realize that the person exacting the vengeance is tainted in a particular way. If we go back to medieval times and you have the executioners who had to do their job, they were not beloved. And they were just doing their job. It wasn't as if I'm sure some executioners probably enjoyed taking blood, but they just had to do their job. But, people stayed away from them. People didn't want to marry them. They took on the taint of what it was that they were doing. So in the same sense here, you cannot go after bad guys without, in a sense, becoming bad yourself. This is also explored in The Bad Sleep Well by Kurosawa. I think it's 1963, something like this. It's in the 60s. But Kurosawa, it's a very bleak ending to that film, but and tied to the title, only the bad sleep well, that in order to pursue the bad, you have to become bad yourself. You have to take on some of these things. And Dante's, or the Count of Monte Cristo, as he's rechristened in the second part, and Monte Cristo, it's Holy Cross, that there is very much a tie to a Christ figure throughout this, somewhat complicated, definitely nuanced. But who is it that is going to solve this injustice? And that depends on what your worldview is. If you believe that this is the only world that we live in, you have to accept the fact that there is injustice everywhere and it will never be fixed. If you believe in karma, if you're in the Buddhist Hindu tradition, then you think that, well, it may not be seen that justice will be served, but it will be served. But we won't really know or be aware of it. We just have to trust in the karmic wheel. But if you come from the Christian worldview, you know that the reason we as children insist on something being not fair, that's not fair, is because we have implanted within us, cross-culturally and cross-time, a deep desire for justice. Where did that come from? Where did that desire for justice come from? It is not some Western affectation. You will find it in the most primitive, undeveloped tribes in the middle of nowhere. They will have a desire and a sense for justice. Where did that come from? And if it cannot be quenched, it's a completely illogical desire. But if it can be quenched, it means that all things will be dealt with in time. And that means if justice is not dealt here in this world, it will be dealt with in the next. And that is the problem of the book, because we know that we have to live with injustice, and how are we going to solve it? And I'm going to leave it to you to read the book, to think through that yourself. I can't explain that, certainly not in a book review. I probably would need 30 minutes just to give you my side. And if you're interested in hearing my side, put that in the comments, and maybe I will do a second video. This is definitely a book that would merit more than one video to talk about. But today I just wanted to give you a sense of why I enjoyed it so much, which I think I've alluded to some aspects of why I did, particularly this idea of justice, vigilante justice, someone who acts outside of the law but still somehow protects our society, and yet himself is tainted. And we've seen that conflict. We saw that conflict in the Christopher Nolan Batman, that he can't have a normal life, at least until Dark Knight Rises, because he's given himself over to chasing the villains of the night. Overall, very, very satisfied with this book. Particularly, a lot of books are known for their first lines. This book, I think, has an exceptional final line, which, it's not a spoiler to read it, so I'll read it. My friend, replied Valentine, has not the Count just told us that all human wisdom was contained in these two words, wait and hope? There's so much in that line. It is a huge payoff for those of you who've read the book. So when you get to that book, I cried when I read that line at the end of the book, because there was such a payoff for me in the reading. But even if you haven't read the book, I think that sentence contains a lot to chew on. There's so much in human life that depends on this idea of waiting and hoping. And that means looking to something beyond this world, looking to something beyond this life. That if you're looking for justice in this world, I assure you, you won't find it. Or if you do, there will be consequences. And I think Dumas, at least through the character of Monte Cristo, expresses that. Now, do I have any criticism? I'll just put a tiny quibble. I do not like the resolution of the love story of Dante's / the Count of Monte Cristo. He is paired up with someone who I don't think he should be paired up with. So without spoiling too much else, I just think there are certain ways that storyline could have been resolved. And again, if you'd like to hear that, I'd be happy to do another video on that. Just put that in the comments below. All right. Finally, don't be dissuaded from reading this. I had read The Three Musketeers shortly before reading this, and I was so disappointed on a number of levels. And because in this channel, I generally only do books that I like to recommend. I don't do hate videos where I say, don't read this book for clickbait. I generally only do recommendations on this channel. So I read Three Musketeers, was really disappointed with it, but I had such a good impression of this book that I didn't think about it as a Dumas novel, even though Dumas had just really disappointed me. And I'm glad that I did. So if you also, like me, were unimpressed by The Three Musketeers, put that out of your mind and treat this as a totally separate work. Just because it has the author's name, don't worry about it. And yeah. Power of forgiveness as well is the last thing I would want to leave you with. The power of forgiveness is something that is tied in here. And it's something that the Count of Monte Cristo has to learn as well. We see the revenge proceeding along a straight line until it starts to get a little derailed towards the end of the story. And the Count of Monte Cristo's challenge changed. And like I said, I could go on for a lot longer. So I'll leave it there. So if you liked this review, this is the time of the video where you hit like, subscribe, share this with people who might find it interesting. If you'd like to support my work here, there's a link in the comments below not in the comments, a link in the video description where you can buy. I'll link to the Penguin edition of this book. And there is my Patreon if you'd like to support these videos. That's how I do these videos. I get a little trickle from the Patreon. Until next time, enjoy your reading.